Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeff Eggleston for the new technology stream. And today we are blessed and very fortunate to have Danny Buttreux. I think that's how we correctly pronounce it. Basically, Danny is going to be talking about a cloud-based mainframe application development, reality or myth. And what I would ask is, if anybody's got questions, could you please put them in the chat? And what we will do is we'll interrupt Dana as and when there's appropriate matter. Other than that, I'm going to hand it over to Dana. Thank you very much.
I guess most of you, yes. I'm just looking. Most of you guys are in Europe / the UK, right? Correct. So good afternoon. I'm happen to be in Tampa, Florida, United States right this moment. So it's early morning and I'm still drinking coffee. So bear with me. Some of you know me and know that it doesn't matter what time of day I'm always grumpy. So let's see if we can do the next step. So I've got some long history on the mainframe. I used to work for IBM, in fact, retired from IBM and came to work for CA, which was then purchased by Broadcom. I currently live in the Czech Republic and continuing here with Broadcom work on development, DevOps tools, but I have a background in other parts of the mainframe as well. Are you admitting people? I am. Jeff? Okay. Yeah. Because it keeps popping up on my screen too, and every time I click on it, it changes the screen. So
yeah, I am. I'm trying to. Yeah.
Yep. So this is a basic Broadcom disclaimer. Most of what I'm going to be talking about isn't. It's future technology, but from a Broadcom point of view, I'm not telling you anything about products in the future. So there's not much risk here. So let's first look at some business context of the mainframe, of DevOps, and why looking at cloud-based development environments is very pertinent to the world we live in today. There is still heavy manual efforts with the developers and other roles in the development process, and an awful lot of context switching, which every time you do a context switch, you have to get your head back in the groove and get focused. And there's lots of analysis that says that slows things down and adds risks to quality. Whether we like it or not, there are still inefficiencies, silos, movement of code from one organization to another. And although it's improved a lot over the last years, frequently there's duplicate effort as developers do QA, and then another QA department does QA, and then there's another department that does security, and each of them builds their own environment, etc. Those kinds of things. To the extent that that can be automated, that'll help reduce time and improve quality. And a reoccurring theme that gets hotter and hotter every year is business change, and that especially on the mainframe, people are retiring. People even like myself someday, but not anytime soon. And that has an impact on the platform, has an impact on businesses. And to the extent that we can make it easier to bring new people on, train them, that's part of what this is about. So some things to be considered to mitigate these risks are improved automation, which I mentioned earlier. Anything that's repeatable, automate it. Anything that doesn't require interaction, automate it. And there's lots of different ways to automate these days. In particular, Zoe is a great way through open interfaces to the mainframe to automate things. shift left quality. Instead of everything being done late in the cycle, move it up sooner. Do more quality analysis up front, better metrics, what have you. And then to the extent of bringing in new talent and training people, being able to have multiple languages for a developer, move to contemporary kinds of tooling. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's meet Madison. Who is the person we're talking about? Who is the developer of the future? Developers today want to spend time coding. That's IDC analysis that I'm quoting, but it's true. Developers prefer to spend time coding than to do other things. They have a do-it-yourself, can-do attitude, and they have a strong bias towards automating things. Repetitive tasks are quite frankly boring and not intellectually stimulating, so they'd rather automate them, and that's a good thing. Many developers work in many languages, so they may be working on applications in a particular language or a small set of languages, but when it comes to automation and other kinds of things they do, that typically brings in other languages or automation frameworks, etc. That means that developers are working in multiple kinds of languages, multiple kinds of environments, and to the extent that that can all be in easily accessible or one place, that's good. And let's not lose sight that most importantly, they are our future. They are the future for the platform. They are the future for the applications running on the mainframe. And in my heart, with the mainframe, I think it's somewhat the future of the world. So it's rather important. So let's ask the question, what is the most popular mainframe IDE? I suspect many of you will get this right, but let's get a little drum roll here. Yes, it is still ISPF. ISPF or SPF was introduced on the mainframe back in early 70s, and then ISPF was introduced in the early 80s. ISPF brought to the mainframe the ability for developers to create interactive screen-driven applications, as well as there was a design for how the layout of the screen should be, consistency on PF keys and what have you, which hadn't existed with SPF and made ISPF very popular. Since being introduced, it's gone through multiple iterations of improvements, and it's integrated in the operating system and is quite fast. Makes it continue to be pretty popular. On the other hand, is this really the environment we think new developers are going to want to stay in? Certainly when you're doing some mainframe stuff, it works, you stay in ISPF, but the minute you need to go off mainframe, well, this isn't the best interface. And to the extent that you can do that all in one environment, I think that's better. And I think that's what new developers are going to be looking for. So what's been going on in history regarding IDEs? Well, as I said, as we've discussed, ISPF is the de facto standard. It still exists. In many ways, it's what you have to do for certain tasks, and still today, and so it's not going away anytime soon. In the early 80s, IBM introduced Visual Age, a set of tooling for developers that was very language specific. So there was Visual Age COBOL, Visual Age, I can't remember them all, but there was 5 or 6 different Visual Age tools that took a step into the modern development IDE environment. Then in early 2000s, Eclipse Foundation was created. Started off with a large contribution from IBM, but other vendors have added to it. It's open source, and it's been around for more than 20 years now. It was the first time that there could be plugins and extensions added, and so it really made a big change when it was introduced. A fun fact is, why was Eclipse named Eclipse? Well, it was named Eclipse because it was supposed to eclipse Visual Studio. So it's kind of a funny fact here. Eclipse is still being in use, today. It's still being used on the mainframe, and it's quite effective. But if you look at it from today's standards, today's technology, it's pretty old. So let's look at what does Madison, what does the next gen developer looking for? Well, Visual Studio Code is the most predominant IDE in the market. There are some other IDEs that are very powerful in the market, but they tend not to be multiple language. They tend to be more specific to a single language, for example, Java. But Visual Studio is a very easy to extend architecture. It's a lightweight client and very, very popular. More than 50% of developers say that that's their IDE of choice. Visual Studio is tightly integrated, and Git is at the nucleus of how Visual Studio works. Git is the most predominant version control system in the market, and the two of them work together. There's also platforms for SDKs and CLI, and you can do all kinds of automation and all kinds of languages in Visual Studio. Eclipse is also extendable, but tends to be a little bit heavyweight in architecture, and Visual Studio has really used more modern architectures, more modern languages for it to be written in, and it's much more lightweight and easier to work with. So as I said, VS Code has over 20 million users. It's very lightweight, it's very popular, and it's totally integrated with Git. It's Zoe enabled, and I'll show you some of that in the demo. It's open source, and it has an extensive extension library and all kinds of choices. From Broadcom point of view and from a Mainframe point of view, there's open source extensions that we're offering, and we call them Code for Z. So they're extensions to VS Code that you can add the extensions individually, or you can add them as a bundle. The bundle is called Code for Z. Though that UI, that user experience, those set of extensions that we know with VS Code can also run in cloud-based environments, and that's what I'm going to talk about in demo today. Examples are code spaces and Red Hat Code Ready workspaces. There are others like Gitpod and what have you that are integrated with GitHub in the background and allow you to build or use an IDE in the cloud. So what you need is a browser, and you connect to the workspace, and you can do your work. I'm going to demo that in a moment here. It's full VS Code compatible. In other words, the code that we write for VS Code, Code for Z, runs seamlessly in code spaces, for example, or any browser. And the only thing we do is test. We don't have to make changes. The architecture is seamless. Equally, it's Git and Zoe enabled, and many of the extensions are open source. So why are cloud IDEs interesting? One is onboarding teams quickly, or onboarding team members quickly, or having somebody go look at a problem, for example, that isn't necessarily on the team, but you need them to go look at the problem, and maybe they're not sitting in the office next to you and you want to share. With a cloud-based IDE, you can actually share your environment with somebody else, and you can collaborate together in those workspaces. It also has a central place where the developers can share things, and team administrators can administrate one set of workspaces and not have to go around to everybody and tap them on the shoulder and say, do this, do that. It can all be done centrally. The developer has a choice. They can use the cloud IDE, or if they have it locally on their machine, they can in fact use the workspace with their local development environment as well. So if you have VS Code loaded on your machine, you can choose to do it that way. If you happen to be, say you're at home and you don't have your laptop and you need to access it on the cloud, you could do that. So it's got that kind of flexibility as well. So if you look at it from a development services, all those extensions I talked about are available. It has an architecture similar to VS Code, which supports language servers. If you're not familiar with language servers, basically that is an architecture that allows us to not change the editor, but to extend the editor to support different languages. And that's how we support COBOL and assembler. We have IntelliSense and refactoring, which are capabilities that most modern edit environments have and expected, and we've added that for COBOL and assembler. Similar to language servers, we support debuggers through a similar kind of architecture to language servers, in that we use the debugger user interface of VS Code, and we extend it to work with mainframe debuggers. Everything that a normal IDE would give you, VS Code gives you: intelligent commands, root access terminal, various languages for automation, are all built into the IDE. From an enterprise level, from a business level, why are cloud based IDEs interesting? Well, maybe the biggest reason is security. All the code is sitting in the cloud. With a VS Code on the desktop scenario, the developer is working on code, and that code is downloaded locally onto the laptop. In the case of a cloud-based, you're only viewing the code. The code is actually sitting in the cloud, sitting on a server. I say a cloud or the server because it can be sitting in the cloud, or it could be a cloud instance that's installed locally on your own local machines. So it's not on my local laptop, but it's on a server somewhere, either in my enterprise or in a cloud scenario. It also allows for centrally managed workspaces. So if software needs to be updated or what have you, can all be done centrally. It can scalability from a performance or availability can be managed centrally. So in some cases, it can be even faster than having a local machine, because it can be scaled to even better, higher memory or better CPU capability. So it's got those characteristics as well. So let me jump into the code. So I'm going to show GitHub code spaces in the demo.
Can I just make a suggestion before you do that? It's been
Sure.
very quiet in the chat. It would be nice if anybody's got any questions, any comments, please. No questions are stupid, so please, any stupid questions as well, please.
For sure.
Yeah.
So has anybody played with code spaces? Anybody played with a cloud-based IDE before?
Okay. I guess that's a no. I think we'll carry on. But if anybody does have anything to say or any comments, please, we'd welcome them.
All right. So what I'm showing is GitHub Enterprise. So what I'm going to show you requires an enterprise GitHub license. And you can see here, this is paid for by Broadcom. And when you have that license, you can then create a workspace. You can create a workspace on any branch. I happen to have created one on main. And I've already got one created here, but I haven't started it. So I'm going to click on this to start it up. And you'll see that I'm fairly quickly come into a screen that looks an awful lot like VS Code. And it is, I'll show you, it looks and feels just like VS Code, and I'll show you that. I wanted to show the startup because my experience with cloud-based IDEs in the past is startup time can be prohibitive. And I have found with code spaces here that it's actually quite reasonable. So what happened is it started up my container, and then you saw it gradually populate my screen with the contents. So it does that, it boots up what's in the container, and then it goes and it looks at a file called, in a dev container called a devcontainer.json. And in that devcontainer.json, it says, what do you want to load after I've built, IPL'd the environment? And in this file, it's saying, I want some GitHub related stuff. I want to add JCL language support, and I want to add code for Z. And then down here, it says post to create. I want to run this install dependencies file. And this install dependencies file is this file. And in here, it's installing Zoe and it's installing Java. And so when this is done, everything is up and running. Now, if I wanted to say, come down here and add a new extension, I can do that. And when that extension, when I stop this workspace, that extension, if it hasn't been added to the dev container, to that JSON file, it won't come up the next time. But I can right mouse button on this thing and I can say add to devcontainer.json. And once it adds to the devcontainer.json, every time I start this workspace, it will come up. And when you make a change to dev container, it will show up under Git, and you can push that to your Git server, so you have it every time you create a new a workspace, or if you wanted to share that with somebody. So does that make sense to everybody? If it doesn't, raise your hand, ask a question.
It's certainly making sense to myself.
Good. So if you're familiar with VS Code, you're familiar with the tabs on the side here. Let's start by looking at the extension. So I have installed the Code for Z extensions, which include an app analyzer, COBOL control flow, which I will show later. Here's the language support for COBOL. This is a data editor for Mainframe. So this is the ability to edit VSAM files, for example. Debugger for Mainframe. I'll introduce you and demo Explore for Endeavor. Oh, no, I'm not going to demo Endeavor Explore, but that's a way to interact with Endeavor. There's assembler support, JCL language support, so the IntelliSense capability for JCL. I happen to have installed Rex as well, and Zoe Explorer was the thing that I will be demoing, and I'll give you a little bit of a demo on how Zoe's integrated. Zoe CLI is integrated as well. And you can search for other extensions and install them, and then add them to the dev container.json as you need. Here, I'm looking at my local files. So what does local mean in a cloud-based scenario? Local means it's within the container of the cloud instance. It's not sitting on my laptop, it's sitting in the cloud. But it's local, it's not sitting on the mainframe, it's sitting in the cloud container. I happen to have some mainframe COBOL sitting locally. And so you can see here, we've got highlighting, what have you. When I click on something, here's the outline view, which allows me to jump around within the source. Similar to other things, I can also look at that highlight here, and I can jump around and jump to places as well. This is all part of VS Code, which is all part of the cloud based thing. So I also want to show this shows Zoe Explorer. Zoe Explorer is here. Zoe Explorer allows you to interact with data sets. It allows you to interact with Unix system services files. It allows you to interact with jobs to see the status and what have you. And there's an extension for Kix that is a Kix Explorer, which extends Zoe Explorer that you can also add as an additional extension. And so you could actually have another thing here with Kix Explorer. You can customize this screen. You use Zoe profiles to log in. So I'm clicking on this. If I want to search for something, let's say this is an existing search I've done. So it saves them. And I've now downloaded, no, not downloaded. I've now got visualization to the files that are under my high level qualifier.slick asterisk. And in here, I've got some COBOL source, and you'll see there's some copybooks and some JCL associated with this program. Here's a particular program. So this is going to my mainframe in Broadcom, and it's now downloaded this file slick PO to my cloud instance, and it's gone out and found the copybooks that are associated with this file, which are sitting there. And so I can now actually jump into them if I want to. So this is the copybook. If I wanted to find something, I can go to a variable and then go to definitions, and it might pop into this one if that's where the variable's defined. I can build a control flow. So this is a control flow for, my screen is rather small here. By the way, can people see this all right, or is it characters too small?
You can see it. I can see it on the screens. I think you've just got to get a bit close sometimes. But yeah, on the right hand, what you're pointing out is, yeah, you need a magnifying glass a bit.
Yeah, well, this here, I needed a magnifying glass. This is part of VS Code, but in the flow here, this is a visualization of, and you can click on spaces. It shows you how you get to a place, and it'll jump to that in the code. This isn't intended to be a long demo of the COBOL support, but to give you some idea of what's built into VS Code. And this is using COBOL language support, which is an open source project. So let me show here. This is, whoops, this is an Explorer for Endeavor, but I don't have it defined. This is Git. So if you're familiar with using Git, you get access to your code. You can do commits, you can do pull requests, you can do updates, clones, pushes, pulls, all those kinds of things, just like you would in VS Code. If I have if I go to this particular thing, here's the outline view again for this program. And if I click on this, you can see the same thing that I showed you before for the local file. Any questions? So what I want you to understand is the power you can see on VS Code is available on the cloud. My perception of past cloud scenarios is they're slow and cumbersome. Just so you know, I have a very minimal machine here, and I think you can see it's pretty fast. And I'm even accessing a mainframe and being able to download the code pretty fast. And my experience from other cloud IDEs is it was very slow. And when you went to go open something, it would take a long time or take an enormous more time than you would want to spend. And I find with the new ones, with the current technology, it's really very nice. The other thing I wanted to introduce you to is this dev container and how you get the basic container, but you can customize it very easily. So if you're working in a team environment, for example, and everybody on the team needs certain plugins or extensions, you can put them all here, and you can share this dev container JSON and put it on in your own instance. Of course, you can then create your own, which gets saved off into GitHub, and so it doesn't go away if you have to get rid of this container and create a new one. It's been a few months since I had done this, and when I created a new, my workspace had gone away, and when I created a new workspace, I just came in and started a new workspace with this command here, create a workspace, and I had everything I had left off from the last GSE when I was building this demo. So I was able to get back up and running really fast, much faster than if I go to my VS Code environment and find out, oh, I've got this, that, and the other I need to update. So I've become a real fan of these browser-based IDEs. If there are no questions, it's hard to see faces, Jeff. So I know some of the players are my cohorts at work, so they're going to keep quiet, probably. Anyway, so what was I trying to show you? I was trying to show you that a developer can stay in VS Code, can stay focused on the task at hand. Statistics show that if a person changes focus, it costs them something like 23 minutes to change and refocus their energy and attention on a new topic. So being interrupted or having to jump to a new tool or install a new set of things does impact people's productivity, and keeping a developer focused is very valuable to the business. In addition to editing code, you've got an environment where you can do automation, you can trigger build jobs, you can see status of JCL, etc. And you can do that all in a collaborative environment of Git. We also provide in Broadcom the ability for Git to interact with the mainframe SCM endeavor. So teams can work in Git, natively in Git, and also have their assets back on the mainframe. And you can trigger like Jenkins pipelines to do CI, CD, or you can do automated testing. So our goal is to keep the mainframe open, make it relevant, and be able to use all the modern development processes, tools, and technology with the mainframe, and do that in an open fashion. So I hope this is giving you some view, some insight into how cloud-based IDEs are relevant in today's world of greater and greater security risks. I think cloud IDEs have a short term to be pretty relevant in today's world. I don't think they're heavily used today, but I think this is a new technology that's got a lot of wind behind its sail and is going to be predominant in the market in the next few years. It's very relevant today, but I don't know how well it's adopted, especially in a mainframe kind of world. I hope you've seen how it's actually performs pretty well, and it's very reliable as well. So
I would concur that I quite taken back with the simplicity of the presentation and the code at the end. I thought it was a really good demonstration, so thank you very much for that. So again, I'm trying to solicit questions. We've had no questions at the moment. There are 19 participants. Surely somebody has any comments or questions, please.
What I find interesting is I've been trying to show you how fast it is. The IDE is actually running in Azure. So when I go into GitHub, I'm asking for a container to be IPL'd that's sitting in a cloud instance over in Azure somewhere, popping into my browser. When I ask Zoe Explorer to go find a piece of mainframe code, I actually have it tunneled through my laptop here. So it actually has to come to my laptop. That laptop then goes into the Broadcom infrastructure, pulls the code back through my laptop, back into the Azure container, and pops it up onto the screen. Now, I don't know about you, but that impresses the heck out of me. And because it seemed to do it as if it was sitting on my machine locally, and I impresses the heck out of me. In a world where that's potentially locally installed on your own machine, not your own laptop, but your own company servers, I can only imagine it being even more secure and more performant. And Jeff, to your point, one of the things I really want to illustrate is it's simple. The UI is very similar to what you would do day to day on your workspace, and the inhibitors to try this largely are whether your company has, in the case of GitHub Codespaces, an enterprise GitHub license, which we do in Broadcom, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty.
So I just want to say thank you very much. One of the things, have you got anything further to say? Because it looks as though we're going to give about 20 minutes back of everybody's time, actually. So that's really good. What I would say is in the chat, I actually put the link of where you can leave feedback. It would be really good if you can provide feedback, because we depend on that in terms of putting future agendas for future presentations. So please, can you put an agenda on? Sorry, can you put some feedback? If you can't find it, which is why I mentioned agenda, it is actually in the agenda. If you click it at the bottom, you can actually go straight to the feedback. But I'm encouraging you to do that. So I'm going to bring this to a close, give you some time back. And what I will say, just to do a little bit of a pitch for the next one is again from one of your colleagues, Vaughan Marshall. Yeah, Dana, sorry.
Vaughn, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at the next one, which is from Vaughan Marshall from Broadcom, and he's going to be talking about developing for Mainframe the Git native way. So that should be an interesting follow-up, and that'll be at 3:30. So in this virtual room. But what we are going to be doing is we're going to be closing this room down, and it'll start up again nearer the time. So
Yeah,
to that, go on, Dana.
Yeah, so with that in mind, Jeff, I talked about using VS Code in a Git native way. And so what Vaughn will be talking about is very relevant to this, except for I'm talking about the IDE and the developer experience. What Vaughn's going to be talking about is build, CI, CD kinds of things. They're definitely related. They're definitely integrated, and they work whether you're working in a cloud scenario or in a local on your laptop kind of scenario. So this story all weaves together.
Okay, thank you for that. And then this is my last point. As far as the foils that you've presented, Dana, what we're going to do is we will make them available through the agenda so you can click them. I'll make sure that happens. And finally, I'm going to say thank you very much, and I'm going to give you your time back. And have a good afternoon, what's left of it, or good morning, wherever you guys are. Thank you.
Thank you.